Welcome to another episode of Code Breakers, the podcast that empowers you to overcome life's challenges and tap into your full potential. I'm Sam, your host. This week, I'm privileged to host Reagan Cannon, executive and career coach, TEDx speaker, board member, and author of The Cure for Career Quicksand: Advancing Your Career One Slice at a Time. Today, Reagan will share her wisdom on courageous leadership and building meaningful connections in the workplace. From navigating challenges to fostering a culture of curiosity, I promise there are valuable insights to inspire and empower anyone who feels stuck in their career. Hi, Reagan. How are you today?
I'm great, Sam. Great to be here.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you for joining. I'm so glad to have you. It's an honor. I'm really looking forward to our chat, but before we get started, do you want to share just a little bit more about yourself and your work?
Absolutely. So I spent over 20 years in corporate America, the last really 10 as a corporate executive, working for huge companies, Amazon, AT&T, getting great experience as a global leader, leading teams of over 10,000 people, and also working in leadership development, leading things like executive development and coaching. And that really is my passion, is developing leaders. And so just a couple of years ago, I stepped out full time to get to do that and work with leaders, both keynote speaking, getting to do leadership workshops and development programs, and getting to do coaching. So that's what I'm doing now.
That's awesome. So thank you for sharing. I love that you're doing leadership development, coaching, speaking full time. So I was looking forward to talking to you about relational courage today, but maybe before we jump in there, can you tell me a little bit more about kind of the folks that you partner with and the target audience that you work with when you coach or when you go to these speaking engagements?
Absolutely. So I really specialize in helping leaders scale. And that really means, scaling is you have the same amount of finite time or energy and you get more from it. And that happens as you continue to grow in your leadership. You get larger teams, you get larger responsibility, you have larger budgets you have to manage. And all of a sudden you find yourself in a way where you cannot lead the same way you led before. So yes, when you have a team of 10, you can lead a certain way. Then when you lead a team of 100, but when you start leading a team of 1,000, you don't know the people in your organization, and you really are stuck or overwhelmed or burnt out. You have to change the way you lead. And so specifically what I find where I work with all kinds of leaders in my coaching practice on scaling, but specifically I have a passion for helping women. And women oftentimes, they get stuck in that spot where they're told they're a high performer, they're told they're fantastic, but when they want to make that last jump, Sam, to like director, senior director, vice president, like start getting into those senior levels of leadership, what I find is the way they led before is not scaling to the new way they need to lead, and they're stuck. So I have a book called The Cure for Career Quicksand that helps people get unstuck. And I also focus on my TED Talk is all about why women aren't getting promoted and how they need to change their relationships in order to continue to scale and be able to be promoted into these senior roles.
Oh, excellent. Okay. I'm even more excited now, honestly. So definitely, we originally crossed paths, although briefly, at Amazon, right? And I saw your TED Talk. I love your book. I've also read that. And like I said, I wanted to talk about what relational courage is and why it's important. So maybe we should start there.
That's a great place to start. So, Sam, when I was getting ready for my TED Talk, and I have such a passion for women getting promoted, I kept asking myself, what is the real reason women aren't getting promoted? A lot of times women are told they're fantastic, they're high performers, they're amazing. But then when they go up for promotion, they're told things like, is she ready? No, I'm not sure she's ready. Is she strategic enough? She's great operationally, but is she strategic enough? Some of these things that we just keep hearing over and over again. And so I said, I need to get to the bottom of this. So I partnered with an amazing researcher, Susan Mott. She's incredible. And we structured a nationwide research study where we interviewed senior leaders who have the opportunity to promote people to senior leadership. These are presidents and CEOs and in big roles that are promoting people. And I said, why?
Yeah.
Well, what are you looking for when you're trying to promote people? And why aren't women being promoted? And I tested some of my theories with them. And what we found was it didn't have to do with performance. It didn't have to do with education. What it had to do with is how we show up in our relationships at work. And it's because, as women, we're often taught, I love Katty Kay and Claire Shipman's book called The Confidence Code. And they talk a lot about how little girls are raised differently than little boys. And we're told things, sit still, mind your manners, act like a lady. Like there's no act like a man, that's not even a phrase, right? Why is act like a lady, a phrase? It's like because there is this protocol within society that we're supposed to act a certain way. We're supposed to be good. And that be good mentality shows up so many different ways in the way we interact, the way we talk to our boss, the way we show up with our peers, the way we lead our team. And so what I found was if women are going to get promoted, if they're going to continue to move up, they're going to have to change and challenge these societally driven beliefs that are ingrained. And so that's going to take courage, because what I found, Sam, is a lot of women, they say, well, when I feel confident, I'll make some of these changes. When I feel more experienced, when I feel like I've got it all together, when I kind of feel like I've got things under control, then I'll challenge things and make things different. But that, what I found is, courage is an action. Confidence is an emotion. And therefore, if you're just going to keep waiting for confidence, you're just going to be waiting and waiting and waiting, you're for that feeling. You got to override that feeling with courage and move forward even when you're afraid. So that might look like challenging your boss instead of just being compliant. That might look like speaking up when you don't feel like an expert, like you're totally competent in front of your peers and participating and fully engaging instead of holding back and waiting. And that will look like empowering your team, building capability in your team versus feeling like you got to control everything because it's just faster if I do it myself, and I just need to control everything, and I need to make sure we don't do anything wrong, and that perfectionistic tendency that makes us slow down our team instead of empowering them. And so it takes relational courage. That's where it came from.
Oh, absolutely. I love that. And so one of the things that comes up for me with relational courage is somewhat related to the competence complex that you mentioned as well, which is kind of this idea that I want to go kind of be courageous about approaching somebody that maybe I don't work with super often, but I really need their help on this project. But there's that fear of, if I go ask them for this, are they going to think I'm stupid? Or do they think I don't know, what I need from them specifically? Are some of these really rudimentary questions going to make me look like I don't belong here? I'm curious if that's a common kind of trend that you see with women that you coach, and what advice you might have for folks that are struggling with a similar kind of mentality.
Oh, Sam, you summarized it perfectly. Yeah, there's this feeling like, first it starts from this belief. I don't know, like you said, I don't know if I really belong here. When men get promoted, they think, finally, they recognized how amazing I am. When women get promoted, we think, I got to prove that they made the right decision. I don't want to let them down because they took a risk on me. What? Yeah. You've been with the department 5 years with amazing track record and incredible performance. It's not a risk that they promoted you, but we view it that way. So then instinctively, we don't want to ask questions or, to your point, ask for help or any of this kind of thing, even when we could achieve more working in a team environment than just trying to do it all ourselves. But we have the competence complex telling us, well, you should know that. You should be an expert. You need to go get a master's degree in that. Why? You have experience. But I don't have a master's degree in it. So I don't know if I can speak up on that. I'm not certified in that. So I don't know if I can, we put this extra burden on ourselves. And so a couple of the things I tell women, one of my favorite techniques is called the manila folder technique. And it's this idea, and I love manila folders, and I've got one right here. Our manila folders as women, we label them very narrow. Experience I have leading a sales team in manufacturing products, right? Like very narrow definition on our manila folder. So therefore, when we have an opportunity to work in sales, in retail environment, we're like, well, I don't have that exact experience. I can't apply for that job. I'm not 100% qualified. Well, if we took our manila folder and we relabeled it sales experience, right? Which is actually the root of that experience we have. Then what I find when I ask women, well, how do you, what's in that folder? What's in your sales experience folder? They're like, oh, well, I've got years of sales experience. I definitely have a lot of experience in sales. I know how to set up a sale, I know how to cultivate a relationship. I know how to engage someone. I know how to look for a lead. I know how to do all that. And it's like, well, okay, when you relabel it, you actually have a lot of experience. So when you open that manila folder, instead of it being empty, it's actually quite full. And so what I tell women is, we don't give ourselves enough credit for the incredible things that we do. So rather than labeling your experience so narrow and feeling like, oh my gosh, look at all the areas I don't have, I say relabel your experience more broadly and feel confidence and take courage from the experience you do have. And that I found has helped fight the competence complex.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so powerful, right? Because it also brings us back to the idea that all of the experiences that we have bring us to a cumulative point, and those experiences can be valuable even if they aren't exactly from a sales and marketing background.
Exactly. You've got transferable skills. What we have is very transferable, but we tend to make it so narrow and specific that we don't take that credit and we don't have that confidence.
Well, I'm so curious now because you mentioned this just a minute ago about how kind of societal norms and some of the beliefs that are just so deeply ingrained in how we approach life tends to affect women especially. But I'm curious from the perspective of, relationships and promotability at work. How do you think those factors also come into play?
Yeah, I think it really shows up. We talk specifically about promotion, but I work with a lot of small business owners. I work with a lot of different people who may not be looking to be promoted, but are just looking to be more effective at work. And I find this relational courage, it slows us down in a lot of areas. Like leading teams, right? Regardless of what size team you lead, when we start thinking, I've got to be perfect. And I love this, I chat with women and they'll say, whether they're working in small businesses, large businesses, whether they're individual contributors, or supervisors working around people, we have this feeling of perfectionism. And it's really this fear that it slows us down from taking risks. It slows us down from empowering our team to take risks. It slows us down from encouraging our colleagues to take risks, because if we have to be perfect, then we can only be within a very small sphere of what we know for sure will work. But innovation doesn't happen there. Innovation happens in trying things that are new, that are uncomfortable, that are untested. And so what I encourage people to do is rather than focus on perfection, I have us focus on progress through experimentation. And again, an experiment is not like, let's just try something and see if it works. No. An experiment, look up the definitions of experiment. You have a hypothesis, you build a structured time frame test and test time length, right? Like 2 weeks or 30 days or whatever it is. And then you stop at the end and say, was my hypothesis true or not? And that experimentational mindset, instead of saying, oh, it has to be perfect and we can't have any errors, it's saying, I expect not all experiments work. And so therefore, I'm going to try some things. I'm going to experiment with some things and see if they work or not. If we can encourage our teams to do that, if we can encourage our peers to do that, if we can encourage ourselves to do that, you'll unlock innovation and in lots of different areas, whether you are in a small business, a large business, you know, you're an individual contributor, anyone can utilize that kind of framework and mental model.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I love that so much because it shifts away from the fear of failure and kind of stepping into this courageous place, feeling the fear and doing it anyway. But
Yes.
then moving, yeah, absolutely, moving forward and seeing what happens as a result. That's wonderful. So I'm really curious, what was kind of the turning point for you? Like, at what point did you decide you had to approach life a little bit differently, that you were going to live and lead boldly and courageously? Like, what was happening in your life or your career, and what were some of the beliefs and things that you had to break through? And how did you do that? And how does that inform your coaching today?
Yeah, I was about 10 years into my career, um, really frustrated that I just couldn't get promoted. I was promoted pretty quickly. Like I was part of a leadership development program. I moved up pretty quickly to sort of this mid-level management, and then I got stuck. You know, first couple of years getting promoted very quickly, next 7 or 8 years really stuck at that level. And I just kept thinking, if I work harder, I will get promoted. If I deliver more, I'll get promoted. If I can just find the hustle and, kill myself getting it done,
Yeah.
And, it's all about my results. If I can just turn in better and better and better results, I will get promoted, Sam. It will happen,
Yeah. Yeah.
They'll
Yeah.
notice how great I am and get promoted. But here's what I found. That transformation to senior leadership is a big jump because the hustle will not get you there. I found myself
Okay.
sitting in an In-N-Out parking lot, hands on the wheels, tears streaming down my face, thinking, what is wrong with me? Like, why can't I get promoted? I'm turning in phenomenal results. I'm getting exceeds or far exceeds every year on my ratings. I'm in every high potential program they have. Something is not working. And what I realized was, you talk about the turning point, it was desperation. And I just got fed up and I said, you know what? I'm doing something wrong. I'm just going to do things differently. What's wrong? I mean, what do I have to lose? What I'm doing is burning me out. I'm working these long hours. I'm killing myself on the weekends. I'm killing myself getting everything done. It's not working and I'm not getting promoted. And so, and I had just been through an interview process to get promoted and came in second. I was just like, here we go. I'm even getting interview opportunities and I'm not getting promoted. So here's what I did. 2 weeks later, I'm sitting in an interview and with this really surly, kind of grumpy leader. He was like really intimidating, like gravelly voice, very well respected, but also, was a tough leader.
Yeah.
And I just decided I was going to go toe to toe with him, and something kind of snapped in that interview. And we're having good conversation. And then all of a sudden I just said, you know what? I'm going to just show up differently. And I said, he said, is there anything else at the end of this meeting, you want me to know or whatever? And I said, you know what? I just want you to know I'm not going to be a yes woman. I'm not just going to do what you tell me to do. I'm going to speak up. I'm going to share my point of view. At this point, I've got some experience and insights I feel like would be valuable. I'm going to share them with you, and I'll be respectful. I'll do it behind closed doors when that's appropriate, because it is important as your chief of staff that we have sort of a united front when we go out. But I'm going to share it. I'm going to tell you how I really feel.
Yeah.
And I had this moment of like quick panic, like, oh my gosh, why did I just say that? Like, what? Up to this point, I had sort of been like, well, God, I'll help you, whatever it needs, and here I'm showing up like really authentically, like, this is how I'm going to share it. And Sam, he looked right at me and he said, that's exactly what I'm looking for. And he promoted me and made me his chief of staff. And I, true to my word, true to his word, we created an environment where I pushed back on him and he pushed back on me. And there were times I told him things that were uncomfortable. There were times he told me, like, hey, I don't agree. And we go back and forth, and he respected me. He trusted me. He called me his iterative thought partner. And we
Nice.
built incredible things together over those 18 months. And he promoted me again. You know, I went from not being promoted for like 8 years to
Yeah.
being promoted twice in basically 18 months and became an associate vice president over 5,000 people. And he
Wow, that's
basically,
amazing.
he had so much faith in me. And the reason
Yeah.
why was I used relational courage. I actually spoke up and shared my point of view, and we were able to build great things together. And that respect is what really got him to lean in and advocate for me to be promoted again. So that's my turning point. And that's why in my coaching practice, in my keynote speeches, I'm always pushing women, use courage. It's not like a guarantee, like, oh, everyone is going to be like, great job, used courage.
Yeah.
But I tell you what, you will get stuck in your career at some point if you don't use courage. And so, yes, there will be some times it doesn't go perfectly, but I can guarantee you'll hit a wall without it.
Yeah. Well, and like we mentioned earlier, the growth mindset, right? You can learn from every single one of those experiences. And what I love about this is that turning point for you was not only stepping into courage and being willing to just kind of say what needed to be said and what you really felt, but the authenticity that came with that and kind of how quickly things shifted for you when you stepped into that power. So I love that so much.
Thank you.
I was actually going to bring up your book, The Cure for Career Quicksand. I recently reread it, and you mentioned that the people you work with, for, or lead can make or break your success. I think this story like perfectly encapsulates that. So I'm curious what advice you would give to someone like who's struggling to get promoted and in that very same place you were for 7 or 8 years. They feel like they're doing everything right and it's still not working. What advice might you give to them to navigate through that and come to a successful outcome?
Yeah, the research shows that women in particular, we show up right on time for the meeting and we leave right after the meeting. And
Yeah,
we're
that's
so
probably
busy and we
true.
have so much going on. It's like,
Yeah.
when I ask women whose careers are getting stuck, I say, how much time have you invested in going to lunch with peers or finding mentors that are outside your normal realm or networking in the company? I often get, I don't have time for that. And I tell them, you don't have time not to do that. Really, especially, I was just having a conversation this week with a coaching client about how hard it is when you become more senior. When you're sitting at a certain point in the organization, you kind of get to own end to end a project, right? And there, you might say like, okay, I am the product leader over this very specific product. But then when you become the director or senior director of product development, now you have 10 projects that are underneath you with product managers owning each one. So actually, in a way, your ownership becomes less the more senior you get, which feels counterintuitive. But really, your job becomes, how do you enable and what Harvard Business Review calls path clearing? How do you clear the path for your team to be more successful? And the way you do that is relationships. You have to have relationships with people. So I tell people, look around the corner, not on who you need today, but who you might need in the future, and start building relationships and equity with them today so you can call on them tomorrow. I tell people, whenever you anticipate, like I joined an organization and I was the global leader over these programs. And there was someone in charge of the programs, looked very similar job description to mine, that was in charge of North America. There was someone who was in charge of Europe, and there was someone in charge of Asia. And right away, I realized, okay, our job descriptions are very similar, but I'm supposed to sort of be the more senior person sort of guiding the other regions. And I thought, this could be really friction filled because they could view me as either a help or a hindrance. And so I just did what anyone would do. I just bribed her with lunch. I took her out to lunch and we sat over lunch and we got out of the office. We shared stories, we communicated, we talked, we built a relationship. And what could have been very friction filled, like, well, who are you to come in here as the global leader and tell me what to do, became a great partnership right out of the gate. And so that is how you build relationships to get things done. And you can use that technique at any level. Look around and think, who do I need to be partnering with? And anticipate what friction or challenges could come up. Start building those relationships when the waters are calm. And then even when the waters get choppy, sometimes we get into these email volleys, volleys back and forth. I took over an organization that was like literally at the other organization's throat. I mean, they were just like, oh my gosh, they were like ready to kill each other. People were quitting because of the relationship. And the senior leader and I sat down, we went out for coffee, we sat down, we got out of the office, we sat down, and we just talked through, at the end of the day, you want what's right for the customer. We want what's right for the customer. Let's get refocused on the customer instead of each other and do that. So I would just say, Sam, I've just learned over the years, those relationships. And when you are in a virtual or hybrid environment, what used to be informal now has to be intentional. So you can't just say, like, I'm going to just have some shoulder rubbing in the hallway. You got to set up that time virtually to connect, to make sure you're using the beginning of meetings to share about something more personally. Oh, I see something in your background. Tell me about that. Or, I saw a cat walk past your screen on a last call. Tell me, what's your cat's name? You got to be intentional about building those relationships, but they will make you more effective at what you do. And it's more fun to have those relationships at work.
Yeah, absolutely. It makes the whole thing more enjoyable by far. I really love what you just said, though, with path clearing, and especially like when you start elevating in your career, path clearing and trying to make the way for other people and doing that through relationships. I'm so curious, how often do you find the perfectionism and the need to know everything before you come to that conversation holds folks back, and how that can be detrimental to their team?
Such a good question, because this article from Harvard Business Review, what they actually dove into was there are two kinds of leadership needed. One of them is path clearing, like we talked about. You have a general knowledge of what your team does. You may not be a subject matter expert, and that's okay. What you need to have knowledge of is the challenges that they face, and partnering with them to understand how you can help remove those challenges. So you don't need to be the SME in this area. You don't have to have a master's degree in that. I led many teams. I was like, I have a cursory understanding of it. I led data scientists. I'm not a data scientist. I know all about data. I know how to use it. I know what's needed. But what I understood was, what are my data scientists' challenges? And what can I do to go help clear them for them as a leader? I had a reverse mentorship. I had a mentor who was 2 levels below me at the organization. And I said, hey, I really want to learn how to code so I can lead my software developers better. He's like, Reagan, I'm not teaching you how to code. That is not what I need. I do not need your people at your level do not need to worry about that. He said, but I will meet with you quarterly and tell you all the ways your level screws up what I do. I said, great.
That's so good. Yeah.
So once a quarter, I bought him lunch. Again, I'm very into bribing people. This is very much bribing people with food is definitely a strength.
Hey,
It's a strategy. And so I would buy him lunch every quarter, and we'd sit down, and he would just tell me, you don't make decisions. You're not clear on what you do. You don't you don't build a culture where it attracts the right talent, so we lose people and then all the work. And so he just gave me a list of things I could do. And that gave me the ability with my software development team to then clear the path for them. The other way of leading is called intensive guidance. Okay. And intensive guidance can be a tool. You really do take the time to dive deep into what they do, have deep knowledge of what they need. You get in there, you do the daily work with them, you get shoulder to shoulder and help them. But it's for a short duration of time. A crisis moment. When I was leading a team of 10,000 people during COVID, when everything shut down globally, I was leading these huge call center organizations. When the Philippines and India shut down, we lost half of our call taking ability. Wow. And it threatened our ability to even respond to customers. I mean, it was just like, it was an all hands on deck moment. every morning, even as the senior leader at 7:30 Pacific time, we were all on a call globally, working through the challenges. What can I do to help you? Let's work together, deep in the work, down in the detail, down in the weeds. What does it take? Because it was a crisis moment. And for about 3 weeks, we met every morning to just work through the challenges. But as things began to normalize and as we began to get it, I went back to my area of path clearing, trusting that my team had it, trusting that they were able to do what they needed to do and I could go back to my path. And that, Sam, is where I find a lot of leaders get stuck. They either have really deep knowledge of an area, so they want to be in the intensive guidance zone. They want to be in intensive guidance zone for long periods of time, or they actually own parts of their team's work that aren't theirs to own. And so they get stuck in that intensive guidance, and that leads to bottlenecks for your team, slows them down, and burnout for you as a leader.
Yeah, absolutely. I love the first example you gave of the individual that did reverse mentoring with you. I'm so curious about this because that says a lot about your style as a leader, but also the environment that you create to be able to have the comfortability on the other end for that person who's giving this feedback to their skip level. And in a way that sounds like it was very impactful, but also very informative. I'm so curious, like, how do you feel like you created that environment and how did you get there with that individual? Was it relational courage? Was it something else?
Well, Sam, you remember at Amazon that principle around learn and be curious. And if I sharpened one tool in my shed while I was at Amazon, it was curiosity. And it was such a gift to be able to lean into curiosity. I remember when I first went to China, and it was going to be my first trip to China, and I was going to work with the team there. And I understood theoretically that it was a different culture. And so I reached out to a peer who had worked in China. And I said, please help me understand. I want to be very culturally sensitive. I want to be culturally in tune with, the customs. And I understand everything is very different. And I sat for 30 minutes where he told me, this is where you sit. This is what you should do. This is what you shouldn't do. This is how you hand a credit card to someone. All the different customs and everything. Yeah. And I realized that then I went to China and I just utilized curiosity, asked questions. I was a student. I just learned from the team there. I went with the flow. Even though I'm a very structured person, I was like, I'm just going to go with the flow. I'm going to let them guide me. They were adamant on spending an entire day looking at panda bears in Chengdu. And I said, that feels really weird as a day for me to spend my time. But I went with 4 other women from the office and I was able to have deep conversations with them and really learn what was going on. That small group relationship gave me more insight than if I had just walked around the office or had these big meetings. And so I just said, you know what? That curiosity, that just served me so well. And as a global leader, I got to build that muscle. And so I just started to learn that questions are a superpower. If you can learn how to ask phenomenal questions, and so often, even as women, as men, as other people, we obsess over what we're going to say. Yeah. But I tell you, obsess over the questions you're going to ask. You're far more impactful as a leader asking phenomenal questions than you are making these grandiose statements, because you sit in a posture of learning, and you not only learn, but you help tease out the other person's thinking. You sharpen their thinking while you're learning. That phrase, you learn nothing while you're talking.
Yes.
Such a good phrase for extroverts. We need that, So curiosity really, and I think building that culture of curiosity helps you learn from others in the organization, no matter what level they are.
Yeah, absolutely. I think this is so important, especially for anybody who's dealing with any sort of confidence issue at work, regardless of gender or identity or otherwise. When I was struggling with this myself, one of the pieces of advice I got from one of my mentors, who was also in kind of a pretty male-dominated space within the company, she said, I asked somebody I trust, how sure are you of the answer or of the general trajectory that this question you're asking is going to take the conversation? And for women, that's usually 90 to 95%. You have to be sure that this is the right question to ask, and this is going to take us it's going to head the conversation down the right trajectory that we need to go and have today. Whereas for a lot of other folks, especially men, that could be 20, 30, 40%. And there's really no question about it. It's just kind of, this is what's coming up for me right now. Let's talk about it. Let's throw it out there and see what happens. I'm so curious what your thoughts are on that, if you would agree based on your observations of that kind of anecdotal data point, and any like last bits of advice for really stepping into that courageous, being willing to maybe even ask a silly question just to start beginning to stretch that muscle.
Yeah, I think what happens in meetings and conversations is it's very easy to make it about me. It's very easy to make it about me. Well, am I going to look stupid? Are they going to think this is a good question? Am I going to show up in the right way? Or should I not? Are people going to be like, and we just have this whole dialogue. It's this hamster running on the wheel, and turbocharge in these meetings. But here's what's interesting. People think you are smart when they are talking. I interviewed for a job one time and I thought, I did not get that job. They asked me like 2 questions and then they talked the entire time. And someone said to me, I bet you anything you're going to get that job because you got them talking about something they're passionate about. I said, okay, well, we'll see. And I totally got the job. Totally got the job. And I was like, oh my gosh. And I tried it over and over and over again. People think you're smart when they're talking. Reagan, I just love engaging with her. She just asks great questions and she's a fabulous listener. I don't know anyone who's like, you know what? I don't like Reagan because she's a good listener. You know what I mean? It's so annoying how well she listens and is so engaged and pays attention to me. Said no one, right? That said no one, right? And so what I would encourage you to do is, I love what you said. Like, yes, if we start gating, how confident am I? Am I gonna, is this gonna take it and this, and it could end up here and whatever. And here's what I'll tell you. If you are sitting in front of someone who's passionate about a topic, who's a subject matter expert about a topic, when you ask them questions and get them talking, they are, especially not a question that's like, well, Sam, I happen to notice, and it's really a statement cloaked as a question. But you are actually asking a genuinely curious question. Watch how the conversation changes because the dopamine hits going off in their head when they're talking are high and they're excited and they're passionate about what they're talking about. Even the most introverted person that I've talked to, if they're passionate about a topic, they like talking about it, they feel confident in sharing about it. Their level of confidence and excitement around their topic makes them perceive you differently. And so that's the safety net I would give people who are afraid to ask questions.
Well, I just love the emphasis on curiosity. It reminds me of appreciative inquiry, which is also kind of another approach to dialogue and engaging in dialogue. But it's really the same thing. It's all about just approaching the conversation, approaching the person, the situation with curiosity rather than an idea of kind of what or how or where the conversation should go.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Awesome. Let's see. So I also love that you talk about how to balance work and life. So I think one of the quotes I came across was how to get the promotion you want and the peace that you need. I think burnout, especially among women and other historically excluded folks, can be very difficult to navigate. So what's some of the advice that you give to folks who are on that cusp?
Yeah, I would just say, as I've studied this, it's more about the talk tracks in your mind than the to-do list that you have.
Say that again.
It's more about the talk tracks in your mind than the to-do list that you have. And I'll give you an example. If you show up and you say, well, this has to be perfect. Well, guess what? You're going to work late at night. You're going to work on the weekends. You're going to do everything. You're going to micromanage it. You're not going to empower your team. And next thing you know, you're going to be overwhelmed.
Yeah.
And that wasn't a to-do list. It's the same action item. But you put a talk track on top of it that said it has to be perfect. There's this, I think it's this notion well, women have to do it 10 times better or they're not going to be a result. And they're like, and whether that's true or not, there's debate and there's a lot of things that say, but that's a talk track that if you subscribe to it, then you're going to feel like you have to do 10 times more work than other people. And I feel like, I was just talking to someone who, a coaching client who was feeling burned out and overwhelmed. And they said, I'm so frustrated because, I got this negative feedback on my review because I was waiting on data from someone and I was spinning my wheels and I never got what I needed from that other organization. So why am I being dinged for that, And I said, well, what due date did you give them it was due by?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I didn't really give them a due date per se. I just said we needed to get it done. And I said, okay. And when it didn't get done by this mysterious time frame, who did you escalate to? Well, I didn't really want to escalate because I feel bad escalating. I feel bad. I know they're really busy. I said, okay. So you missed a deliverable, and you didn't get to deliver what you wanted, but you didn't set clear expectations and you didn't set a due date and you didn't escalate when it didn't get done. And so you're overwhelmed and frustrated and feel like you're being dinged. She's like, yeah, I guess I could have done a lot of things. And see, what was there was a talk track that was, if I ask for something, I'm a bother.
Yeah. Yeah.
If I ask for something, I'm bothering people. And I'm burdening people. That was not a to-do. That was a talk track. And that talk track caused her talked her to, slow down, not be clear in what she wanted. And everything, spiraled from there. So next thing you know, she's burned out, overwhelmed, and not performing. But that was not a to-do. That was a talk track. And so as I help people look at, I tell them to do practical things like always do a meeting audit. Do you have to be in this meeting? Why do you have to be in this meeting? Can this meeting be shorter? Can it be moved from weekly to bi-weekly to monthly? I tell people to clear their calendar. I tell them to block out time on their calendar so that they can get things done. All that helps.
Yeah.
But if you have the wrong talk tracks, you're just going to continue to feel stressed and overwhelmed and do more work than you probably need to be doing because you're subscribing to that belief.
Yeah, absolutely. 100%. I couldn't agree more. I love all of that. And I think everything you just said really gives a fantastic kind of pitch for why coaching is so powerful. It's such a powerful engagement because it really causes you to reflect on the role you're playing in the situation you're struggling with and how you can take control of that situation. And I think that's a perfect example of exactly how to do that. That was perfect.
Absolutely. Shifting that belief changes your calendar, even if you haven't changed anything on your calendar.
Exactly. Oh, that's fantastic. Another quote that I loved from your book actually is that great leaders understand that there's a human being behind the employee ID number. So along the same lines, what advice would you give to leaders that are seeking to build healthy organizations and create environments that reward and celebrate ambitious women?
Yeah, there's a company I partner with called Rev, and the CEO built this company because she believes in meaningful connections and the power that changes communities and lives with meaningful connections. And one of the things that I teach as part of her organization is, great expectations are important. We have to have it. They're actually necessary. You must have clear expectations and accountability, ambitious goals. Customers are, want more and they want it better and they want it faster. And so you have to have great expectations. But the best organizations know how to have great expectations and meaningful connections. They know how to do both. And I think what happens is one of the things I found is that, there's this concept I teach called emotional currency. And it used to be, Sam, we'd say to things like, I want you to be loyal. I want you to care. I want you to go the extra mile. I want you to be a team player. This is what we wanted. This is what we expected from people, right?
Yeah.
But then, so in other words, go outside the bounds of what you're really being paid for, which is actually irrational. It's emotional. We want you to have an emotional connection to your job. We want to have an emotional connection to the customer and the product and the mission. But then when people came to work and said, well, I've got a child at home with special needs and I really need to be, it's really hard for me and I really need to accommodate that. Well, that's really something I need you to manage. And you got to check your problems at the door. When you walk through that door, Reagan, I need you to be fully committed and fully present.
Yeah.
Like a robot. So when you want me to respond on the weekends and work, you want me to be emotionally invested in my job. But then when I need you to be emotionally invested in me because I have some sort of extenuating circumstances or challenge, no. I need you to call this hotline. I need you to be disengaged. I need you to step away, whatever. And there's a time and a place to go seek resources. But as managers, it's our job to meaningfully connect with other people and pay them not just with physical currency, but with emotional currency, where we actually pay them with caring and being invested and motivating them and understanding them and getting to know them personally and saying, hey, if we're going to be a team, a family knows each other. They care about each other. They invest in one another. They cheer each other on. They support one another. They're there in the high times and the low times. They're there. Yeah. And as leaders, this is the new modern way of leading. And I'm excited. And I know a lot of leaders are challenged. I get it. I've got a couple decades under my belt and been doing it a certain way. But the new generation of leaders that's coming in, employees that are coming in, they're not asking for that. They're demanding that. They're expecting that you are going to, if you want them to be emotionally engaged in their work, you need to be emotionally engaged in them. And you know what? I think it's going to yield this really high expectations with connection, builds exceptional teams. And that, I think, is going to change the workplace.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. I love that so much. Before we close out here today, is there anything maybe that we didn't touch on that you'd love to talk about or any other kind of words of wisdom?
I would just say that courage and using courage is a practice. And practice is, by definition, you have to do it over and over and over again. And so again, if you're waiting for confidence, it's not going to come until you have courage. Courage builds confidence. And so you have to take that first step. And so, what I like to think about is, think about the one thing, this Post-it note size challenge you can give yourself. Where today are you not using relational courage? Where do you need it? Where are you holding back? Where are you self-editing? Where are you telling yourself, I can't, I won't, I shouldn't? Where are you shooting on yourself? Don't do that. And say, I'm going to use relational courage. And I just encourage your listeners just to grab a Post-it note, write one thing, stick it to your monitor, stick it in your notebook. If you walk around with your notebook, whatever it is, and just to remind yourself that it's not big changes, it's small continuous changes that really make a difference and build that new habit of utilizing courage regularly.
Yeah, absolutely. That's fantastic. I love it. And I still have a sticky note somewhere on my desk here that says, what's the worst that could happen? So there's always that too. Absolutely. That one was so powerful for me. I love that. Thank you so much. Thank you again for the time today. This has been so wonderful. I just want to appreciate the knowledge that you've shared today and the practical advice, honestly, that you're giving folks to leave this call with if they want to own their career and their future. You're such an inspiration. I can't wait to hear about what else you have going on. So what's next?
Well, I just this week launched a new blog called Reagan's Rules. And it's based upon the end of each of my chapters in my book ends with a Reagan's rule. What is that concept? And I share in my book where this came from when I was younger and someone asked me for best practices. They called it Reagan's Rules. And that's kind of stuck with me. And so I share those. I already have some blog posts seated on there that you can look at. My new website, reagancannon.com. Check that out. I also have Instagram and LinkedIn. You can connect with me there. And I have a way for you to set up a free 30-minute consultation with me, whether you're looking for a speaker, whether you're looking for someone to do leadership development, whether you're looking for a coach. I have a free 30-minute consultation call that you can sign up for on my website and would love to connect with your listeners.
Oh, that's fantastic. Thank you so much. I just want to thank you again. This has been so wonderful. And maybe next time we can do it in person, make bracelets, have some snacks.
I'd love it. And of course,
Yes.
a glass of wine. I'm a sommelier, so I
Yes.
love having wine. So
Okay.
over a glass of wine.
Fantastic. We'll have to do that sometime. Wonderful. I don't know about you, but I am super jazzed. From the importance of courageous leadership and building meaningful connections, embracing curiosity, I think Reagan's insights today shed a beautiful light on how we can all play a pivotal role in transforming organizational dynamics. Don't forget to visit Reagan's blog, Reagan's Rules, for more valuable wisdom, and connect with her on LinkedIn and Instagram for the latest updates. Or if you're interested in seeking one-on-one leadership development or guidance from her, you can also book a free 30-minute consultation on her website, reagancannon.com. Stay tuned for more empowering conversations, and until next time, remember, you have the power to break your own code and rewrite your story. Thank you for joining us today. I'll see you soon.